Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Raiden Dalland, and I'm the Marketing Manager at Ondra. Today we are presenting the webinar Get to Know Mipeg X, Session 1, presented by Mr. Harold Goldstein. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions at all during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll bring them up during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Harold. Our presenter today has worked with the lifting applications since 1981, most of this time with the Mipeg products, starting off as a development engineer. The first system developed was the Mipeg 2 system. He moved on to sales in early 90s and is today involved in sales, product management, and business development of crane products at Ondra.
Thank you, Raiden. Obviously, it's me, Harold, and I've met most of you in person, so it's probably the first time we've met this way. Let's hope it works out well. I'm thrilled to see that we have people listening to this webinar in Australia. That's pretty late. Malaysia and Singapore, that's also late. Middle East, and obviously Europe. And we have both South and North America, and even in the middle there in Latin America. So I'm thrilled that you all joined this basic operation of Mipeg X. This is session 1. In a week's time, we will have session 2, which we'll come back to. So today we'll cover the basics, which means I will show you how you can navigate on the Mipeg X touchscreen. It means how can I display the different features which is on the Mipeg X. Those features are called Safe Reach Indicator, Slew Monitoring System, which we used to call OLM, Hook Position System, which we used to call RSI. We've added a wind system, and we can also have a few other features like backlight intensity, washdown mode, and other features. We will also go into how to calibrate a Mipeg X. We start with a boom angle sensor, and when we've done the calibration, we will also show that we have added additional features. We have added several high and low angle limits, and the reason for this is to give you pre-warnings, outputs which can reduce the boom speed, ultimate boom kickout limits, etc., making operation of the crane safer and better. When we've done the Mipeg X boom angle sensor, we will continue to calibrate or show to calibrate a typical load hoist sensor. So that's what we're going through in session 1. Navigating the Mipeg X screen means adding, or for that reason, removing display features. Looking at the Mipeg X, it pretty much looks like what we've done previously. This is the footprint of a Mipeg system. A large, clear, analog type display, obviously now made digital, with an analog needle on top of the green, yellow, and red scale, which is the traffic light type. We will show the hook load, radius, and safe working load as laws and regulation require around the world. Being a touch screen, we can then easily change the sea condition as pre-programmed in the system by just pressing the sea condition window. Hook position, or sorry, the hook between main and aux can also be changed by tapping onto the position of the main or the whip and changing parts of line or falls the similar way. However, adding display features means much more. And what is essential there is that top left-hand corner, we have a push button called View. And this is how you will view, look at, regard all the information. Meaning, if I press the view, I will get sort of a pop-up screen, which has different options. The options you select will be green, indicating they are selected. And in this case, I've selected a safe reach indicator and a boom angle sensor, which will then be displayed. Both the moment and the boom angle sensor has a timeout, and the timeout can be altered by changing the number 10, which means it will cancel itself after 10 minutes on the display to minimize display active display features. So selecting those two, going back on to the normal display mode again, you will have a new feature which we call safe reach displayed, and the boom angle in degrees of inclination above horizontal displayed. Boom angle for 10 minutes, as I said. Safe reach means the unit has the load chart pre-programmed. The computer will look at the load chart and it will look at the load lifted. And it will compute how far can you safely reach with the suspended load in the hook. In this case, it's 0 tons, which means obviously I can go all the way to flat stick, which means 25.9 meter in this case. I'm at 23.7, which is also indicated. So this looks ahead, takes the guesswork away from the crane operator, makes the operator more productive, and makes without compromising safety. So safe reach and boom angle is only one of several options. You will also see that we have a backlight, which you can sort of dim or intensify by using the slider. We also have a push button there, which is called touch inhibit. It is a touch screen, so when you touch the screen, active elements will start operating the screen. But touch inhibit means that you are able to wash down the display, to remove dirt, fat from fingers, and so on. By the way, the display can be used with gloves, so you can operate it in areas where it's required to use gloves. The 360 degrees scale has been the footprint of a Mipeg system for many, many years. And it wasn't easy to go to what we call a combined layout. Although a combined layout means that we go from 360 to 180. All the information is still on the display, meaning hook load, safe working load radius, core percent, and percent of safe working load, C condition, hook load, and falls. In this case, also boom angle and moment is displayed in ton meters. But this area, the bottom half of the display, is just now blank, means that I have an area where I can populate additional features. These features could be, for instance, the rope speed graphics and information. They're now green, which means they will be populated in the display. So the display has a new scale showing the rope speed in the units which you have selected. If you hoist or lower, and the actual hoisting and lowering speed will be displayed. When you pay out rope, it will keep track of how many meters or feet you pay out in this area. 7.2 meters is paid out. Maybe the most important is the hook position. In this case, 17.8. The reference point is the boom hinge pin. We don't know how high the pedestal is, but we know where the boom hinge pin is. So this means that the hook is 17.8 meters above the hinge pin. In a week's time, we will go into the hook position system in more details, and it will make more sense. But obviously, now you see how we can populate the display using the rope speed indicator. If I then activate the slew or OLM system, both with graphics and data, I simply tick the two boxes and I will go onto the screen. This is now a bird's view of the crane. You look down on the crane, and the yellow unit is obviously the crane with its crane boom. The circle is the crane in full reach. And as we all know, the crane is also operating above the sea. So this area could actually be off-board. This could be a sea sector. It could be a walking bridge to the neighbor accommodation platform. Other areas could be no-go zones. The OLM, the slew monitoring system, is easy programmed to activate no-go zones where the crane is not allowed to enter due to several reasons. It could be dropped objects above the living area, above subsea umbilicals. It could be anything, and you can also change them. But again, more about this in a week's time. So you have a lot of features which can be activated on the screen. In this case, all the boxes are ticked. We actually have one box which is not shown, and that's the wind speed. We can actually also then demonstrate or display the wind screen. It has then quite a lot of information on the screen when all the feature is activated. We can then operate the crane in a mode which all the information is on, or if the operator wants to go simplified, it can if it goes simplified, it can go the simplified way, but rest assured that all the limits, the buzzers, the alarms, the flashing lights, and everything else will be working in the background. So you don't compromise limits, although you go the safe way. It's one simple question which already popped in, which I can answer. I said timeout 5 minutes. One of the question was, what is the maximum? The maximum is forever. If you enter the number 0, meaning no timeout, all that information which is timed out will be there continuously. So you can sort of use it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or with the number 0, meaning forever, it will be there until you go actively in and sort of remove them. Some areas will require these present all the time. So, boom angle sensor, which has to do with the operating radius and limits. Most of you is probably fairly or very familiar with the Mipeg 2000. And if you know the 2000 from the point of calibrating a Mipeg 2000, you will feel safe about this one, because we use the same sensors on the Mipeg X as on the Mipeg 2000, meaning also you can easily upgrade the 2000 to a Mipeg X. And if you know how to calibrate one sensor on the Mipeg 2000, you surely will know how to do it on a Mipeg X. It's pretty much the same way. It's, in my opinion, made way more simple. You don't need a laptop, you don't need a cable, you don't have to use anything else than one of your fingers. But of course, you have to follow the procedure. Although the procedure is written in a different way, the basic of it is exactly the same. So step one on calibrating a boom angle sensor, and the boom angle sensor mounted in a boom foot will measure the angle of inclination. The crane crew or slingers would like radius display. So procedure will always be in the operating and maintenance manual. This is just sort of an extract of that manual. First step in the manual is boom the crane to 30 degrees boom angle, which is simple enough if you know what 30 degrees is. As to 2000, every manual will have a pre-calculated boom angle versus radius. So you go into that table and you find the radius, which is linked to 30 degrees. And obviously radius is measured from the center of the slew to the hook you drop down. And when you get to that point on the deck, you know that the boom is at 30 degrees boom angle. The boom angle sensor will now measure the inclination and report the signal back to the computer cabinet. So first time, we now hit the button, which is called offline. When you hit the offline button, the system will say, are you allowed to do this? And it will ask you for a code, an access code. And whenever required, a pop-up keyboard will show. And in this case, you enter a code, allowing you to go offline. Going offline, you get to the first menu. And the top push button there says select calibration. So you go into the calibration menu. And in the calibration menu, you select which of the sensors, which is recognized by the system, is to be calibrated. So you have a drop-down list showing, in this case, only 2 sensors, and we are going to calibrate the boom angle, recognized as the sensor and the inclinometer. So you select this. Please note that you have something called a view guide. We have an onboard guide in the system, which means that if you've done it before, but you would like some guidance, you select the view guide push button. And the view guide will then show you the steps required. And the first step after positioning the crane in 30 degrees is to select which of the 2 calibration points you want to calibrate. And in this case, it's the calibration point 0, the low, which you want to calibrate. And you have to tell the system that the crane is now in 30 degrees boom angle. So when you press the angle window, you will have the pop-up keyboard and you are able to enter whatever angle, obviously the correct angle, into the system. And remember, press enter. When it's entered, it will load into the system. Now, You told the system that it's at 30 degrees boom angle. The boom angle sensor will measure an output, a voltage. And when you then press the recalibrate push button, it will take a few hundreds, make the average of those 100 samples, and it will load the information into the system by changing the sensor output contents. So that was simple enough, more or less 100% equal to Mipeg 2000. The input was different, it was your finger. Boom angle sensor, step 2 is again as previously. In every manual, we have this pre-calculated angle versus radius. So booming up to 80 degrees, which is step 2, means I have to measure 13.5 meters from the center of the slew to the hook. Now I know that the radius or the angle is 80 degrees. I then select calibration point 1 and enter 80 using the pop-up keyboard. And when I hit recalibrate, you will see that it will require a few seconds to make the average. And when done, it will load the output from the boom angle sensor into the sensor output value. And not to forget, although you've gone through all 4 steps by doing this, you have to verify that the system is operating correctly according to the accuracy requirement. But your job is not done before you actually do a documentation of the calibration. Again, this is done either by writing it down on a piece of paper, or as you will see in next session, you can generate a record, a soft record in the system. The industry has come to us and asked us to provide more boom angle limits. This especially to reduce the risk of operating the crane close to its ultimate limits, meaning high angle or low angle. So again, select offline. Now you select parameter setup, which brings you into a new menu called boom angle limits. And the boom angle limits will show you 3 low limits, 1, 2, 3, 3 high limits, 1, 2, 3, and then you have an activate and deactivate angle. As you see, the default values are split with 2 degrees. And again, whatever degree you want the system to trip on, you can enter by using the pop-up display. It has a question mark on the screen because some people don't realize that those activate and deactivate angles should be different. We don't want the buzzer to go on and off or a relay to click closed or open due to only vibration on the boom. We would like the deactivation and activation to be split with a small gap, like for instance 2 degrees as filled in to this one. So limits will be there to alert operator by triggering pre-warning buzzers. If the crane is able to do it, we can trip an output so you have to boom up or boom down in slow speed when a certain limit is exceeded, or it could be a relay kick out when you reach the ultimate limits, the high angle or the low angle. And this more or less completes the calibration of the boom angle sensor and also setting up the additional high angle, low angle limits. So you are able to do more with the X than the 2000 in a simpler way. And as I said, those of you knowing the 2000, this was the old story, just shown a different way, which makes life easy. And the story will be repeated when it comes to the load hoist sensor, to calibrate the load hoist. And again, if you look at our procedure, and the procedure is again in the operating and maintenance manual, we ask you to go to 45 degrees boom angle with the empty hook just above deck level. This is step 1 to calibrate a load hoist sensor. And remember, the load hoist sensor can be in the aux line, the main line. It could be the main line in 2 falls, the main line in 4 falls, or if you want, parts of line. So, back to calibration menu. Now you select a load hoist sensor. A load hoist sensor in number of falls. You can again put a guide on, help you through the different steps. Starting as the boom angle sensor, which of now 3 calibration points do I want to calibrate? And I see it's a typing error here. Select calibration point 0 should be the right one. Likewise, tick the box, but the wording there is incorrect. Then again, you tell the system what you have in the hook. The hook should be empty, meaning 0 tons. And when you then hit recalibrate push button, you will then force the sensor to be read by the computer, and when ready, it will be uploaded into the system. Next step is pretty much the same. Boom at 45 degrees, and you lift the load. In this case, 22 tons. From a calibration point of view, it's sufficient to lift the load just off the deck, the ground. As long as the crane hook suspends the load, that is sufficient. From a safety point of view, it's way safer just in case we have something which falls off the crane hook. So make sure that this is taken care of. Again, the procedure, in this case, calibration point 1, high load calibration point, is in the manual, but also on the guide. We have a pre-calculated form again, showing you the required test load, or for that reason, information for calibration. For the boom angle, for the whip hoist, for the main hoist, in number of falls, which boom angle, and so on. So, in this case, we lifted 22 ton. Go to this chart and find the right load. Compare this with the load chart on the crane, in the crane cab, so you don't sort of lift a too heavy load. Calibration point 2 is then select calibration point 1, or calibration step 2 is to calibrate, select calibration point 1. Again, the pop-up keyboard, you enter 22, the load which is suspended, and you hit the recalibrate. When recalibrate is operated, again, you will read the frequency from the sensor, and when ready, this will be updated in the sensor output window. We have a calibration point 2, which we also tend to call the midpoint. The midpoint has to be activated. We have a small symbol there called a switch, or indicating a switch, which is red when it's deactivated, and if I press the switch it goes green, meaning that the midpoint is now activated. The midpoint is a load in between the low value, which normally is the empty hook, and the high value, which is according to the table, or at least 70 to 80% of maximum capacity. It is actually the load which generates the highest inaccuracy, because the midpoint is to compensate for inaccuracy in the system or the sensor. When that's activated, you lift the load, you enter the value, and you recalibrate the point 2. To deactivate it, you put the switch to 0, and it doesn't exist anymore. And it's a linear relationship, as we started off with. And the same as the boom angle sensor, do a test to verify correct operation and fill in the form. This is the backstop. This is making the calibration easier. Session 1 was called the basic Mipeg X. And for most of you, this was basic. And if it was basic, it also means that we have succeeded in making the Mipeg X navigation on the screen very simple. The recorded version will be made available for all those of you which is now online or registered. We surely do hope to see you next week, which is May 28th. The invitation will be sent out probably tomorrow, but it is next week, next Tuesday, same time. And then we will go into more new features: the hook position, the OLM, the wind speed, how to operate using memory sticks, how to upload and download information. So it's more new stuff, but we have to start with the simple stuff first, and session 1 was the basic. And now we entered into the Q&A. If I can't answer, I will promise to send you a written answer later on. One question is already addressed, and I don't know, Reidun, if you have anything more.
Yes, you are correct. We did answer one question, Harold. And there is a follow-up question, I believe, from the same person about the touch inhibit. Touch inhibit, yes, is for 30 seconds. Is that correct?
The touch inhibit is, well, when you energized it, you will have a small area on the screen which you have to keep depressed for 10 seconds. If that area, which is, it looks like a push button, is depressed for 10 seconds, then it goes back to normal mode. So it's not like you have to wash it down in 30 seconds, 2 minutes, or 2 hours for that reason. When you want it to go back onto normal touchscreen, you activate it by keeping a push button depressed for 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you, Harold. There is one more question here about the code. If the code is admin password, will it be provided after we purchase the unit?
The system will have a default password, and you are able to go in with the admin password to generate your own passwords, and you can generate more than one. The top level, what I tend to call the super user, which is Some of you will be super users, no doubt. Some of you are already super users. Our own personnel will have the code. So just in case the system is locked up, we can go into the system using a special code, which cannot be changed. So several codes can be generated.
Great. Another one here. Does the calibration of the sensor need any qualification? And how long does the validity of the calibration last?
That's a good question. It's a good question without any 100% answer. We've had sensors out there which has been probably calibrated, but has been working for more than 20 years. We've had other sensors which have seen beatings which require recalibration way more often. Some cases more often than we want to. Depends on shock loading of the sensor. It has to do with installation of the sensor. So it's a very good, relevant question, and I'm afraid I don't have the answer to it. Qualification, you should have been through a training course. You should be a recognized, authorized unit, but or person, but it's no one which can stop you if you have the access code. That's also why it's protected by an access code, and each asset can actually make their own access code to stop unauthorized work like calibration.
Okay. There is another one here. I've seen the Mipeg X brochure, which referred to the Mipeg X as a 15-inch display. Will this fit into a standard crane cabin, and do you have a smaller one?
That's quite a common question. What I've shown you is a 15-inch display, although it's a picture of it in the PowerPoint. So far, we've had this question almost on every installation. What we've learned is that it actually sort of fits in very well. And I would probably say 50% of what we've done is retrofits onto existing stroke older cranes, and it's so far never caused any problem. And in addition, remember that the Mipeg X showing or using the view actually combines OLM, hook position, wind speed. So it's a lot of different display features, which now goes into only one 15-inch display. The second question was, do we have a smaller one? It's in the pipeline, a 7-inch display. The 7-inch is too small to actually sort of combine the OLM and hook position and so on. So that will cover the basic safe load indicator features only.
Okay, thank you, Harold. I think we can manage a couple of more questions.
Okay.
Why have a timeout on the chosen values at all?
Because if you look at the screen with a lot of information, you tend to lose focus of the important one, because it's too many bits of information which is sort of distracting you. Using boom angle versus radius as an example, if you install the system, when you calibrate the system, you may want to see that the angle versus radius relationship is correct, and you would like that information displayed during the test. If the test takes 10 minutes or 2 hours, you can actually tell the system to show both. Later, the guy on your deck would say, I would like that blue container moved 2 meters forward or backwards. You have no idea of how many degrees that is on the crane. So we try to sort of minimize where we can minimize the information on the display. That is the reason for a timeout.
Okay, thanks. Next one, is it possible to switch from meters to feet using the touch screen?
Hesitating there a little bit because what we've done so far, what we've done so far is actually to have a switch in the computer cabinet. So operating the switch, you can select the display units, feet and pounds, meters and tons. We so far has not seen the purpose of having a push button on the display because it's you either want to stick to pounds and feet. If the rig moves to waters which shows metric units, they will show metric units, but it's not like you want to see pounds in the morning and tons in the afternoon. So you can still do that, but you have to open the computer cabinet and then use a switch or an external key switch, but not pressing a push button on the display.
Okay. There is another question here. Has all of the Mipeg 2000 sensor hardware been used for Mipeg X? Any new hardware apart from the wind sensor?
Main hoist, aux hoist, boom angle sensor are identical. We had to go for a different slew angle and hook position encoder. Still encoder, but it's a different make using a CAN bus. So those two are different. All the others are the same. The wind speed sensor is typically a 4 to 20 milliamp or a frequency-based sensor, and we don't manufacture those ourselves, so we can integrate existing ones as long as they have the interface which I told you about. So apart from encoders, they are equal between the 2000 and the Mipeg X.
Okay, so we're going to do a final one for today. Does the screen record whose access code makes any changes to the calibration?
Again, another good question. Not today, but what we have discussed doing is to have different access codes to different people. So when you start your work, you have to sort of log in with your unique password. And if you logged in, you are either in charge by yourself or at least the supervisor of doing the change. But we haven't sort of thought about doing a link between Mr. 123 did a calibration date so and so, but the log on and the log off code is in the pipeline when it comes to the software.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up. Is there anything, Harold, that you would like to cover or say before we wrap it up?
No, it's been fun. As I said, I'm thrilled to see that the best part of the globe has been listening in. If you have questions, if they pop up later today or next week or whatever, please send us an email. Most of you know my email anyhow. And I'm looking forward to sending you the recorded version, which you can also distribute to people who didn't make it today. Make sure that they go through the recording because next week I will not repeat what I've said today, and it would be good for them to have this in the background, and then we hit sort of a new features, and we'll take it from there. So guys, it's been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.